I've been reading a lot of Paizo's Howl of the Wild for Pathfinder 2nd Edition, and something about one of the archetypes has been bugging me a lot. Something about it kind of just slugged me in the face and haven't been able to stop thinking about it. Just kind of wormed in there. Well, might as well talk about it anyway. Might stop it from buzzing around up there. So, let's talk about the Ostilli Host Archetype. Hey everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Trailblazers, a series I want to use as a means to kind of highlight weird and interesting archetypes and other character options for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. I'm doing this from not just the perspective of a player, but also as someone who designs for the system. So, although this will be something of a dive into the archetype, I also will be discussing how this impacts designs for archetypes going forward. But, let's fly into it. The Ostilli Host Archetype was introduced in Howl of the Wild, and conceptually is already kind of cool. When a Circe, the new bug ancestry for Pathfinder 2nd Edition, has a missing or damaged magic gathering node on its body, they will place an Ostilli in its place. The slug-like creature then fuses with the Circe over the course of several weeks before fully replacing the missing node. This unusual symbiosis can, with training, allow the Circe to be used to perform all sorts of weird and wonderful acts of magic. Straight off the bat, we find ourselves with an interesting design, but also with a prerequisite many thought would never come back: ancestry-based archetype access. For those who aren't aware, the first edition of Pathfinder, they had a bunch of archetypes that could only really be accessed by certain ancestries, or races as they were called back then. Now, some of these made sense, but for the most part they were pretty dumb. A lot of GMs ignored these, but there were those who stuck with them, leading to some uncomfortable conversations. For the second edition, they got rid of the idea, and for good reason. We all saw that the Eldritch Archer archetype was no longer restricted to elves, and there was much rejoicing. With the Ostilli Host, we see something of a tentative return to this concept, though I feel in a much better way. For those who aren't aware, the Circe need magic to survive. They derive nourishment from it in so many ways. The Ostilli acts as a kind of prosthetic or assistive device for the bug-like people. We saw it in a similar archetype with the Sterling Dynamo in Guns and Gears, whereas the archetype for those using a specific kind of prosthetic. Conceptually very cool, and I can't wait to see the idea expanded on. But it does leave us with the question, will there be more archetypes with ancestry access? I don't think anyone wants to see a return to what it was like in Pathfinder 1, but as a designer, I can't help but wonder what could be done with an archetype for construct ancestries like the Automata and Puppet, or a plant-based one for Leshies and Kunrasu. And now that I'm thinking about it, a specific one for Anati that he digs into the shape-shifting abilities, or the more spider-like attributes. Moving on from the point of access though, the dedication has a lot going on. I'm going to skip a lot of the lore and peripheral stuff, but know that the Ostilli is a graft, capital G graft, and uses the rules related to grafts. The big thing I want to dig into with the dedication is that it grants two new actions: Repel Ambient Magic, and Spit Ambient Magic. Both of these are incredible for a dedication, but let's look a little bit closer. Repel Ambient Magic allows you to spend an action to give you a +1 circumstance bonus to your AC and saving throws against the next magical attack, cantrip, or spell that targets you, with an increase to +2 at level 12. This is already pretty great, and on the surface looks like a weaker version of the shield cantrip, without the shield block and only effective against spells. Wait, sorry, I misspoke there, because it also includes magical attacks. So, if our perspective Ostilli Host is attacked using an ability with the magic trait, then it counts. Now, this won't always matter, but when you start getting into higher levels, the amount of attacks coming at you with the magic trait will count. Though players, please be patient with GMs, whether an attack is magical or not isn't always immediately clear, so please keep that in mind when using this action. The second action it grants, Spit Ambient Magic, is also great. For a single action, your Ostilli flashes red before sending out a magical dart that does 1d6 piercing damage to a target within 30 feet, with a reflex save that uses the better of your class or spellcasting DC. This is kind of incredible for a couple of reasons. One, because it's a basic save. You're more likely to do damage with it because even on a success against the save, it will do half damage. Two, because it doesn't require a hand to use. Not a single one. Imagine, if you will, our perspective of Ostilli Host is not a caster, but a marshal of favors two-handed weapons. They now have a ranged attack that is without map and doesn't require hands to use. So no drawing it, no grip switching, just point and shoot. This is the equivalent of a one-action cantrip you'd get from something like the Witch. And this is all in the dedication, with both actions auto-heightening based on level. You could take the dedication and nothing else and be completely happy. The archetype gets better though because it's not done with spit ambient magic. There are 5 feats that enhance it, doing everything from increasing its range and damage, to changing the type of damage it does, to even making it a cone instead. Continuing on from spitting though, the archetype also features a bunch of toolbox type feats, helpful for your arsenal. This will allow your Ostilli, and by extension you, to give you self-healing, the ability to sense magic, turn temporarily invisible, bring yourself back from dying, and give you a better version of Counterspell. That last one is where I want to spend a little bit of extra time. Spell Swallow is a 10th level feat that allows you, as a reaction, to attempt to counteract a spell that only targets you using either Arcana or Nature once per day. So it does have a couple of restrictions, namely the spell can only be targeting you, so no area spells, and you can only do it once per day. Let's compare that to Counterspell though, which is a feat you can pick up at level 1 by most casters. Now, it has no hard daily limitation on how often it can be used, but every time you do it requires 2 things. 1, that you have prepared the spell you want to counter, and 2, you must expend the spell slot yourself as well. Considering the massive list of spells available, you may in fact struggle to use this once or twice per level, especially considering that it's restricted to the tradition your caster is using. The striking difference here is that with Spell Swallow, there's no restriction on tradition. You don't need to have prepared the spell being cast, no spell slot is spent, and you can use a skill check instead of what you normally would to counteract a spell. Now, fair's fair. It's once per day, where Counterspell doesn't have that limit. But I wonder how often in actual play that would matter. And consider that you don't have to be a caster to take this archetype and gain access to Spell Swallow. The fact that the wizard doesn't get access to something similar honestly kind of sucks. Someone should really do something about that. Hold up. There you go. Drop to level 8 because this is a claw class feat and requires that you have Counterspell to begin with. Text will be in the description. JSON for Foundry will be available through the Discord, link below. In closing, this archetype provides a lot, and if I have any real criticism, it'll be one that was suggested by Ninzad, a member of our community who brought it up when I talked about this archetype on stream. And that is that it's almost too good. Like if you're playing a Sarky, there's no real mechanical reason why you wouldn't take it. With that much versatility, it'll make it a hard choice between taking a class feat or one from the archetype. And if the game is using free archetype, all the better. From a design perspective, the archetype presents a lot to work with and derive, especially regarding spit ambient magic and swallow spell. And I'm kind of looking forward to see what people do with it, myself included. I have a Counterspell archetype that I've been wanting to take off the shelf for a while now, so stay tuned for that. All that said, I hope you enjoyed the first episode of Trailblazing, and if you liked it, feel free to like and comment. And if you haven't subscribed and want to be kept up to date on what I'm doing, be sure to do that as well. Also, thank you for all the kind words and positive feedback I got for PF2 What Play. These scripted videos are something of an experiment, and it's going really well already. Anyway, that's all for the video. I hope you have a good day, a good night, a good week, no matter where you are in the world. And remember, as always, we are the storytellers. Goodbye.